bass music producer, or when did the Crimson Child's project kind of start?
That's a great question. I have definitely not always been a
Okay, I
bass
didn't think
music
so.
producer.
Yeah.
Yeah, before this, I produced under a different name, which I don't really tie that project to this one too much,
Okay.
because it's just kind of what I was starting out under. Although I might bring it back at some point, but that was more under the house and techno
Oh, awesome. I
sphere.
love both of this.
Yeah, I'm super obsessed with techno, especially. Like, I keep coming back to it.
Nice.
It's the genre that I started out with. When I started producing, I wanted to make bass music right away. I was inspired by Skrillex. I
Yeah.
was inspired by all the dubstep that I heard when I was a kid. And then I realized that to produce it is a whole different beast, and it's
Oh yeah.
very difficult. The sound design, I couldn't get my head around it. I was 14 at the time.
Right.
But my first mentor, I got really lucky with a family friend who was making music, who gave me a license of Ableton, set me up, got me going. When I would go to their place, in the studio, we would work together. He would show me all of his techno projects, and so that kind of led me down the path of using that genre to learn production, because the structures are simpler, easier to get your head around. The instrumentation, it's a lot more minimal, a lot more pared down than the
Right.
layering that it comes with bass music. So yeah, for the first like 3 years or so, it was pretty much just house and techno. And then leading up to the launch of the Crimson Child project, which was in July 2018. For that year, I had really been kind of wanting to get out of that box that I'd put myself in, and spent a lot of time just writing a lot of different genres and seeing what I wanted to take, which direction I wanted to take the new project in, because I knew it wasn't going to be house and techno, but I wasn't
Right.
sure what it was going to be. There was a time I thought it was going to be a drum and bass project. And then I wrote like 10 D&B tunes, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. It's only this style, right? And yeah, in the end, it ended up being like a mixture of the more melodic, future-based kind of influence from Illenium and these kinds of artists, and
Right.
then also being inspired by the darker mid-tempo sound that was really popping at the time.
You have a great your music is great, especially your album that you put out. Fantastic work, man.
Thank you, man.
Great
That means
balance
a lot.
between all of those genres. So that's why I was asking. So I was like, man, he sounds like he has other outside influences, and especially with your early success, early on. I mean, being able to, would you call that tour a world tour? What would you call that? Because it was more of the European countries, correct?
So yeah, I think that there was two different little tours that I've done. One was in the US. Actually, I thought that was the one that you were referring to originally.
No,
Because I did the
the one
States
that
and
was, I can't remember what countries you went to. It was in
yeah,
2019.
yeah. So
Yeah,
that was mostly a trip with friends, going around Europe and like trying to soak in as much as possible. I did play a couple
gotcha.
shows,
Okay,
but I didn't really call it a tour. At the time, I played in Paris and as well in Germany, and those
gotcha.
were really good experiences to get out and DJ.
You're originally from Canada, right?
Yeah, born and raised in Vancouver, Canada.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, my ethnicity is Persian,
Gotcha.
but I was the first person in my family born outside of Iran.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I was saying was with the early success early on, like, do you think because you had those projects before, you were already working, making music for a few years before the Crimson Child project, you just kind of had all the pieces, you knew what you had to do once you started the new project?
I definitely had more of a foundation than if I had just kind of gone in head first, but things have definitely changed since when I first started Crimson Child as a project, in terms of my vision for what I want to do with it, and the sound that I want to present. But it definitely helped that I didn't start with Crimson Child right away. I don't think the project would be where it is if I did.
Right.
I had to kind of get my feet under me when I was figuring out production and the technical sides of it. Not that I've figured it out now, but there's a foundation there.
Right.
And yeah, when I first started working on the Crimson Child project, it was really about authenticity. I was just trying to figure out a sound that really felt like me, because everything I had made before was in the pursuit of technical mastery. And so it was all based on copying and referencing and understanding the existing structures. And now
learning how to put the puzzle pieces together versus creating your own puzzle pieces to put together.
Exactly. That's a very good way of putting it. So yeah, that what that manifests itself as has changed over the course of the
Gotcha.
project, from where it started with the kind of melodic mid-tempo stuff and then going to the album. I think the album is a pretty big departure from that.
Oh
It's
yeah.
really even more in the pursuit of authenticity. I just kind of did away with all the structures that I had in my mind before and wanted to kind of rebuild it all from scratch.
Gotcha. You were talking about how the Crimson Child, the vision, the sound and stuff has changed over time. What do you think was like the main thing that like propelled you to do that? Was it just did it naturally happen, or was there kind of like your technical skills weren't what they were back then when you at the start of the project? So as they developed, you developed a new direction.
I think it's definitely a mixture of both.
Okay.
As my technical skill improved, I got more ambitious with the scope of
Right.
the projects, of how many different influences I wanted to kind of congeal together, because I tried to do that earlier on and just, the execution wasn't there. I just didn't understand how to meld these different ideas and these different influences because I
Right.
didn't understand Ableton. I didn't
Yeah.
understand,
Yeah.
just the pure clicking, twisting knobs part of
Right.
making it sound like a song. So definitely that's a part of it. But myself as a person, I have a really hard time staying focused on just one thing, and I'm not as stimulated by just doing one thing. So I knew early on that I wasn't going to make the project known by just this one genre that I kept doing. That couldn't be the through line that connects all my work, because I know myself enough to know that I don't have the patience to just make one sound forever.
Yeah.
So I tried to find other ways of creating like connections, cohesiveness, and
Right.
one of the ways was branding, and the way that I kind of connect all the songs together and decided to put my face at the forefront of it,
Mm-hmm.
to loop everything together. And then in the album, that was the first time I really showcased my own vocals in the production.
I didn't know that was your own vocals in the production.
Yeah, on a lot of the songs.
That's
actually,
awesome. I'm
because
gonna
I
go back
wanted
and
to.
listen, pay attention to that now.
I actually sang on music before that, but it was
Okay.
always like background. It was always like just supporting whatever vocal was already there. But the album was the first time I took the risk of doing lead vocals,
Right.
because I wanted, like I said, more ways of pulling together the music and giving myself the freedom to explore the genre side more, and not be as confined to, okay, I have to make all the songs in the same style, because the vocals are what connects it, or rather the
Yep.
live instruments that we recorded are what connects it, not what genre it is.
Absolutely. Going into writing that album, I did want to touch. I thought was super cool because I'm very much into like the self growth type, motivational type side of things. You went on a week-long retreat by yourself in solitude. Where was that? I know reading the story, it was an Airbnb somewhere. I can't remember where it was.
Yeah, it was on Bowen Island, which is just off the coast of
Okay.
Vancouver. It's
What was the purpose for you doing that?
I think going there, like the act of leaving my studio and going there physically, was more important than where it was
Okay.
or what I did there. I think it's just that feeling of crossing the threshold
Right.
and going into a new experience and trying to let go of previous expectations. That was really the main thing. It ended up being way more than that, as an enriching experience, because the place was so inspiring to me. It was really out in the boonies, like not close to any kind of civilization. I just grabbed like I went to the grocery store like once, picked up all the snacks and things, and just kind of insulated.
Did you?
For that
So
week.
you pretty much just locked yourself in wherever that house. I'm assuming you
It was a
locked
little
yourself in
cabin.
that. Yeah, a little
Yeah.
cabin. You locked yourself in there and you just wrote music. Did you have an intention of writing an album when you went there, or was it just kind of just a self exploration type of trip?
No, I knew I wanted to start an album.
Okay.
That was definitely intentional, but like on the planning of going there, I really tried to let go of any idea of what the album was going to be.
Right.
I just wanted it to be. But yeah, my two things that I wanted was for it to sound different than anything that I'd heard before, and for it to be authentic to me. I wanted to really like feel like, oh, that this is the emotion that I want to express, and it's coming through in this song. So yeah, that first week was really quite abstract when it came to writing ideas. The very first
you
thing,
let anything and everything flow. Dude,
yeah,
like, I'm just writing it down. Yeah,
exactly, like throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks. The very, very first thing I wrote, though, actually ended up making it into the album, which was the drop of Machina.
Oh yeah.
The 10th song.
Hmm.
Like basically how you hear it in the final version is the first thing that I wrote when I got to the
Wow.
cabin. That was just the space that I was in, and
Yeah.
it came out, and then that went on to
It's
influence
stuck. That's sick.
the rest of the writing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Was there anything else that you ended up working on in the midst of being there, or was it just really wake up, album, eat, album, go to the bathroom,
Uh,
album, go to sleep, album, wake up, album?
I was, I've had times in my life where I've done these like 8-10 hour days, but
Yeah.
it honestly doesn't work best for me like that. Like
Okay.
I tend to be really focused when I'm in Ableton. Like anytime I'm in there, it's 100% of my attention is
Right.
on
So
the task
so
at hand.
it takes a lot out of you when you're doing so.
It does,
Right.
and I am of the opinion that like you should rest hard
Yeah.
so that you can work hard. So
Yeah.
during that week that I was there, I would say that the entire time my mind was on the album, but I wasn't spending every waking minute staring in
Like
front of
plugging
Ableton.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, like I would take lots of walks. I was just trying to take in the space, the atmosphere, the environment as much as possible. So really, like British Columbia is just beautiful in general.
The only place I've been to in Canada is Calgary. That's more our like West Coast though.
I am
Like
on West Coast, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, Calgary is in Alberta, which is the next province over. So you're actually not too far
Gotcha. Okay.
from where I am. But yeah, we're right on the water, just above Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's actually, yeah, it's way closer to the coast than Calgary is. Calgary is more inland.
Yeah,
I mean, just what I've seen in Canada, just being in Calgary, that Canada is a beautiful place, man.
It is.
Beautiful
It
place.
is. I'm super blessed to be
Yeah.
from here. And yeah, I feel like so much of my work is inspired by the environment that I come from. Just yeah, the nature here is incomparable to anywhere else in the
Absolutely.
world.
Yeah, I was seeing freaking wolves run on the side. I'm like, what the heck? I've never even seen a wolf. What was your writing process? Going back to the album now. What was your writing process after you got back home? How did it take shape after you got all the initial,
Yeah, that's a good
ideas
question.
down, I guess you could say.
So I definitely didn't have all the ideas down when I came back. I had like, if I remember right, there was like 10 to 20 just like rough sketches.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 or 5 of them made it into the album. There was a bunch more that I started in the months after that made it in, and there was a lot of sending it out to potential collaborators. Like I would start an idea, and then in my head I'm like, who would sound good on this? I really wanted to get vocals on a lot of the tracks because I know myself, and I know that the instrumentals are going to be out in space and really abstract and weird, and I needed ways of bringing them back to earth. So early on, I knew vocals would be really important. So with each track, I would ask myself, which of my friends could I really hear on this? And I tried to keep the tracks really rough in that early stage because I knew that I would be recording live instruments and that the songs would change quite a bit.
Right, which is very different, especially in bass music. It's very unique. I mean, there's only a few people that do that in bass music, at least, especially nowadays.
Yeah. You know, I didn't want it to just be like club hits or things to play at festivals. I wanted those moments where it's huge and expansive and layered and electronic. But when I was on the island, I asked myself that question of how much do I want to think about like how DJ friendly these tracks are when I'm writing them. And I ended up deciding not at all. Like I don't care whatsoever if these tracks are club playable. But the way that I compromised with that is decided to make all these live remixes, like versions of the tracks afterwards that would be geared specifically for clubs.
That's kind of what Porter Robinson's done in the past.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's a big inspiration of mine.
Yeah.
But I love his live edits, man. Like going to his show is another experience entirely from listening to one of his albums. So yeah, that was a big inspiration for me. And getting a remix album from friends who are also really talented would create this kind of secondary discography adjacent to the album that is geared towards the live side, because I do care about that. But I just didn't want those structures to limit me when I was writing the music itself. I wanted it. When I think about writing music, the first question that comes to mind is, what is the context that is going to be consumed in? When is it going to be listened to? And even if it's not like exactly like that, having that image in my head guides all the
do you want someone at home making dinner listening to like vibing out to music, or do you want someone who is headbanging at the rail.
Yeah, there's
To,
so many different
there's
things,
so
right?
many different,
In
so
the
many different times.
car,
Yep.
in meditation, all these
Yeah.
things like that. That first question influences so many decisions later on in
Absolutely.
the production. So when I came with that question for myself with the album, the answer was like alone with headphones is probably the way that I want this album to be consumed in. So I'm gonna gear everything towards that, you know.
What were some of the differences that you made with the live edits? Just made the drums punchier and made it a little
Definitely
bit more
different
up tempo.
drums, yeah, alternate
Yeah.
drops. What I wanted was for people who had listened to the album to come to the show and recognize like
Yeah.
breakdowns, vocals. They're like, oh, I remember this song, but then to go in a completely different
Complete. Yeah.
direction
Yeah.
than what they expected,
You
and
also
to have that
perform.
depth.
You also perform live sets, though, don't you?
I do, not as often as I'd like.
Okay.
Uh, I debuted the album with a live set that we recorded in a mining museum in BC.
Oh, sick.
And yeah, that was super fun. So it was like a lot of the album songs combined together, some of the live edits, and we did this in this huge like cave like
That's awesome.
space with visuals projected onto the stone walls.
Sweet.
It was really fun.
Super unique. That's
Yeah.
excellent.
So yeah, I would love to play more. I mean, I have all the live edits ready to go. Uh, there hasn't really been any shows in Canada for the last
Yeah.
2 or so years. Things are starting to open up now, which I'm really excited about. I got to play in Europe just before this. I went on another trip similar to
Okay.
the one that I went in 2019. I got to play at Boots House in
Oh,
Germany, which is my
yeah.
dream
Super,
club.
super famous club. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've been watching YouTube videos of sets in Boots House since I was 12, 13. So
That's
getting to play
awesome.
there was unreal. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that trip that you took, I would imagine that it allowed you to get more, not only just creative with the album, but also just get better in touch with yourself and your creative flow. Do you think you discovered like there was any artist discovery during that time?
Definitely. Yeah, there was a lot of self-reflection
Yeah.
while I was there for sure. A lot of questions of like, why am I doing this? Not in the sense of like questioning, but like, what is it all for?
Right.
Type of questions. What are my real motivations here?
Yeah.
And what I came up with is like remembering how it was for me as a kid to discover electronic music and how it made me
Yeah.
feel the first
Yep.
time. Those feelings, like there's nothing that compares to that. Those
Yep.
first times and just saying this, I'm sure there's songs that pop into your head.
Oh yeah.
You remember the first time that you heard it, your life was completely
All
changed, right?
Daft Punk, some original
Oh
Martin Garrix, Avicii, all
yeah,
those guys. Yeah.
so classic. And I realized that like just giving that feeling to other people is all I care about.
That's awesome. That's a great motive to do what you're doing, especially for a living. Are you full time now with music, or do
Yeah,
you have it?
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Ever since high school, basically.
Wow.
In the last year of high school, was really when I decided that I wanted to do this.
Uh-huh.
And I'd gone lucky because in the early years I played in jazz bands in school, and that gave me a lot of credits. So by the end of it, I was literally taking 2 courses, and one of them was music production, and just staying home and making music as much as possible. And then yeah, just continued that out of high school.
Are you all self-taught, or did you go to school at all or did you take any courses and stuff on like production?
I didn't go to school, but I don't want to say that I'm self-taught because I had mentors, yeah,
Gotcha.
which were really, really key in terms of speeding up the learning curve. And yeah, just having someone to bounce ideas off of and get that direct feedback, like definitely YouTube videos helped, but nothing compares to having a really good mentor.
Yeah, it's someone who's gonna tell you if it's good or not. And but YouTube video is like, here's the technical side of everything, but you actually doing it, I can't tell you one way or another.
Yeah, it's parasocial.
Yeah.
I don't even really use YouTube anymore for production. I just found that like it's not even helping me as much as actually sitting in the DAW and doing the thing. Like at a certain point, tutorials are only going to take you so far.
Yeah.
You either need mentorship, feedback, or raw hours inside the DAW. That's really going to make the difference.
Yeah. Going back to the identity thing, how do you think you've gone about building your own identity outside of like an experience like you had with taking a solo vacation type of thing? In what ways have you been able to find like your identity as Crimson Child?
This is such a hard question to answer because I feel like identity and perception are 2 things that are so hard to kind of pick apart, and it's a lot based on how I view myself, like how I'm going to answer. So can be completely different to how other people see me. I have no clue. But in terms of my identity, how I see myself, I really am trying to evoke deep emotion in the music that I make. That has always been the first priority, is what am I feeling? How can I express this in the song? Everything needs to start from there. And then from that point on, how I execute that, I like to think that my identity comes through in the live instruments that I use, in terms of the influences that I bring from my childhood, from growing up listening to all sorts of different music. I don't think there's anyone that has the influences that I do in terms of how varied they are.
Who would you say were a lot of your, like, give me some examples so that we can understand the range of artists.
I think the biggest one is my mom, and I have to start there.
Okay.
Because
that's right. Your mom is a professional musician, huh?
Yeah. She was a flamenco singer and dancer for 20 years. For super long time, until she started her own band. Which is a fusion of Persian traditional music with flamenco.
What is flamenco?
Flamenco is a Spanish singing and dance and or it's a style. You should definitely look it up. It's
I will.
Super traditional, very 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 important to the culture of Spain. And my mom's living there now, like studying. She studied flamenco in Spain and then is singing flamenco in Farsi, which is pretty unheard of.
Wow.
So she's really quite influential to me, has helped me so much with production. The first time I even produced was on GarageBand on her MacBook when I was 14. So I think I have to start there, because she really has made such a big impact on the way that I make music, on the influences that I take. But there's more traditional influences like Skrillex, Porter Robinson, etc., that I started off with. But in today, like the last few years, I've really been influenced by Bon Iver a lot.
Oh wow, yeah.
Like, anyone who knows me knows I'm absolutely obsessed with them. I have every album on vinyl. I've listened to 22 a Million 100 times, probably more than that. I listen to Bon Iver all the time. I think it's made a big influence on my music, in the album especially. And I mean, nowadays I find myself we're getting more and more recent. I'm just getting deeper and deeper into techno, and that's just where my head is now.
Who are some of your techno favorites?
Do you know Bibliotech Records? Have you heard of them?
No.
Super sick underground label in Europe. It's all European techno. That's really the main reason that I even go there, is just for the shows.
I feel like techno is definitely a lot more prevalent in European countries. Like here, it's very much of an underground type of thing.
And there are good techno artists in the West, in North America, but the real bread and butter is in Europe. I really like Sebjack a lot. He's the guy who runs Bibliotech Records. He's got some really sick people on his label. Ozgur Khan is insane. I
like techno, so I'm gonna go look that. I'm gonna go
definitely. I can send you some stuff. My brain works strange with music, where I will be hyper obsessed with a certain style for a couple of weeks, and I just drown myself in that. Dude, and that's all I want to listen to.
That's how I am.
It's the best way to be, I think, because you take so much from a genre when you're steeped in it, and then you just move on to the next thing when you need to. And I think, if you're making music throughout this whole time, it'll show in your sound.
I find that I'll listen, take for example, like drum and bass. I'll listen to drum and bass for 2-3 weeks, and then listen. That's the only thing I'll listen to. And then after that, it starts to get to a point where it's oh, this is really good. And then at the end of it, you're like, okay, I kind of need something new, refreshing. I don't know.
I'm exactly the same. Absolutely.
Even when I was growing up, I grew up on classic rock and country and stuff, and not a lot of people in the EDM community can say that, but especially I'll even go back and listen to some of that stuff sometimes just to get a fresh ear. Something outside of even EDM too is helpful.
Definitely. I go through phases where I don't want to listen to any electronic music. And
a lot of producers, a lot of people don't realize the people who work in the industry and they're around it all the time. It's their job, or the top producers, even the producers.
They don't listen to electronic music.
They don't listen to it. No, they do not.
That's trance. No, you got to connect with your roots. Absolutely. For you, that's classic rock, country. For me, sometimes I'll just listen to Stromae, because that was the first thing that got me into. It was the first concert I ever went to. His stuff, and it's not at all similar to what I make or where I'm at, but to connect with where you were when you first heard that music that influenced you, it's so important.
So important, yeah. Through your branding of Crimson Child, how do you think people view, or how do you think you would like people to view your project? Like, how do you put yourself out there on social media? How do you engage with other people when you're at shows? Like, what's the feeling that you want to give other people?
This is the part I think I'm worst at.
Okay.
Not because I don't want to talk to people. I love talking to people, especially about music.
Yeah.
It's the thing that really gets me excited to have a conversation with someone about music or people's passions. But with social media specifically, I have a really hard time staying consistent with it because it just gets to me, you know, like just scrolling and seeing people's posts. It even has nothing to do with them. It's all just
all internal.
It's all internal.
Yeah.
And yeah, I want to think that when I post or when people are interacting with me, I try to be as vulnerable as I can. I just want to share how I'm feeling, where I'm at in that place, and what I'm doing, you know, like
right.
Sometimes I do insulate, and I'm very guilty of this, where I'll just stay off of it or make music for a couple of weeks and not really update anyone with what's happening.
Not that it kind of hurts your project on a business sense, but on a personal standpoint, I think it's a really healthy thing to do.
It's so important.
Yeah.
It's so important. So yeah, it's something that I'm working on. I want to get better at. I understand that just like creativity, my ability to put myself out there swings.
Yeah.
Depending
Dude,
on
me too.
the season.
Yeah, I'm something I'm working on too. I agree.
Yeah, I think a really important part is not to feel shame for that. Like to understand how your mind works, how you need breaks sometimes, and
absolutely,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Now that you just brought up breaks, I think that's a, you know, in relationship with social media too, healthy daily habits. For me personally, I put it on my actual calendar. I go on, I might pop in if I have a down moment during my day or something, but for the most part, if I'm working, my phone is just off to the side. I schedule in 15-20 minutes every single day, like actually put it in my calendar. Like, okay, this is the time of my day that I go on and interact with other people and build relationships and like cultivate things online. But the rest of the day, I need to put it away. You know what I mean? Absolutely. What, do you do anything like that? Do you set a specific time or anything?
You know, I really should. That's really good. Yeah. No, it's always been kind of, you know, I don't often post like when there's nothing happening.
Right.
When I'm just working on music, like that's the thing I really need to get better at is keeping people posted.
Who does a really good job at that is Ganja White Knight, if you're a fan of them.
I have listened to their music. I've never actually checked out their socials.
Them and Wookie, I think, have very good, like, they're like Wookie, they're working on stuff, but then they're like posting like, oh, this is a new whip I did, or, you know, it's like they're keeping the fans engaged in their creative process. So absolutely. I think they both do a great job at that.
I should post whips more. Yeah. I used to when I was first starting out, but now it is kind of on a, like, if I have something coming out, then I'll post about it. If I have something to say, I'll post about it. But yeah, it's something I'm trying to work on and get better at.
What other habits have you developed for yourself that do you think have added to your success?
I'm going to talk about making music for a second, because I think a lot of people, and myself included, really get in their own head when it comes to production and what they want to make and who they're trying to impress with their work. And one habit that's really helped me get around that is every time I sit down to work something, I'll try to start something completely new first. Even if it doesn't end up being a song or anything else, just messing around in Ableton, throwing sounds together gets you feeling looser.
I guess the juice
to
is
begin
flowing.
with. Yeah, definitely. And lowers your expectations for yourself.
Yeah.
Because if every time you sit down, you think you're going to try to make a masterpiece, it's going to burn you out.
Yeah.
Inevitably. And I have burned out, and it's not fun because then I'm sitting there feeling guilty for not making music. So
how did you pull yourself out of the burnout phase? Just not do it for a while?
Yeah, there's a few different ways. I mean, I've definitely been in that place where you're hitting your head against the wall, trying to push through it. And sometimes you have to do that if there's a deadline or something external that's influencing it. You know, I do a lot of production for other people as well, not just for Crimson Child. So sometimes in that case, you know, clients don't care about your burnout. So
no, they do not.
There are
situations.
Yeah, there are situations where your burnout is irrelevant to the situation. So I've been there, and it's not very fun. Taking breaks is one of the best things you can do for it, to really get away from it, and to just not look at Ableton for a couple days. But I find that the main thing is you gotta get inspired again. You gotta find your way of getting inspired, and that's different for everybody. For me, that's listening to new music or going to shows.
Right.
Like,
That's what initially drew you to it, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the thing that really connects it for everybody. Find what initially drew you to it, and you got to respark that again.
Yeah.
If you burn out, so it's a lot easier said than done. A lot of times that needs to happen in tandem with a break for it to also work. But yeah, just going to shows, man. Like, a really good show can completely change my whole mindset.
What are your some of your ways that you've worked around it, and what are some of the warning signs that people should look out for if they're working really hard on their project?
In terms of warning signs, I think it's all about listening to yourself and to your body when you're working. Like, when you're working on music, how are you actually feeling inside? In your head, are you like, oh, I should do an hour? I've been in that place where I'm like, oh, I need to do another hour of production so that I don't feel bad about it later that I haven't done this hour of production. Right. That's the wrong place.
Instead of being pulled to like, oh, this is all I want to do right now. It's like I have to type of thing.
Yeah. If it's driven by guilt or shame, then you're close to burning out. If it's driven by passion and love for the process, then you're in a really good spot.
Yeah.
That's really the main thing, I think.
I feel like
it's all internal. You'll know.
It helps your creativity too. I feel like when you're being pulled in that direction, you actually want to do it versus having to force yourself to do it.
Absolutely. But in terms of getting yourself out of it, man, like, it's so different for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that, I talked about the first part, which is going to shows, but listening to new music, I want to open on that a bit more, because it's not just listening to new music. You got to listen to music outside of what you normally listen to, outside of your sphere of influence. And that's the really hard part, because a lot of people, when they want to go listen to new stuff, they'll either check out more of the genre that they're in, or they'll, more of the artists that they listen to.
New releases.
New, but like not really new, right? New of what you already know.
Right.
And, that's all well and good. But if you're actually seeking new inspiration, checking out the hottest new dubstep tracks, probably not going to do it for you.
No, definitely not.
You gotta expand your influences, and it's going to help your music when you come back. Because I really think the more diverse your influences, the more unique your music is going to end up sounding. Absolutely. People are so concerned with having signature sounds and sounding unique and all that, but 90% of it is just what you listen to. Because every idea you've had is coming from somewhere else anyways. It's just in how they all combine together to create something new. People think that the guys who invent new genres just woke up someday with that idea, but it's almost never like that. It's, from my perspective, it's an amalgamation of that person's influences.
Right.
You steal from so many different places, so many small things, that it's no longer stealing. It's just a new thing.
Yep. And I think that's where innovators like Skrillex, he pulled from so many. He still writes so much different music. His newer stuff is like nothing compared. Like, everyone knows him as creating dubstep, like one of the originators of dubstep, but the stuff he makes now is not even close to
not
dubstep.
Even close.
Not even close.
No, he's so awesome. Well-rounded, and I think that is the biggest takeaway to take from him, is to not pigeonhole yourself, because people are going to do it to your whole career anyways. Absolutely. So you might as well be well-rounded, so you can show them, hey, I can do this.
Who does a really good job at that too is Nitty Gritty.
Absolutely.
He has side piece. He has different sounding. Like, he doesn't, under Nitty Gritty, it's not just bass music, which he does a great job at, but he also does like more like Valentino Khan type style, like club kind of like hoppier songs. And then he also, like I said, side pieces completely. They're doing great with side piece. So
very talented guy. Yeah, absolutely.
One last thing that I wanted to touch on before we kind of wrap up here. Do you think taking breaks kind of helps with like the ebb and flow? Like, when you're not feeling inspired, taking a break. I know taking a break is hard for a lot of people. They don't want to, because like you said, they might have pressure put on themselves, or they put that pressure on themselves and they do face burnout. But how do you go about handling like the ebbs and flows of like when you're feeling really inspired, but then at other times accepting that like it's okay that I'm not super inspired right now, I can go focus on something else?
Yeah, I think I think, yeah, the first thing is understanding that there is an ebb and flow.
Yeah.
That's the number one, because a lot of people, myself included, will think that they're a machine and that they can just keep writing
Right.
and nothing's going to stop them, but you will burn out at some point.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. Anyone who's anywhere in their music career has burned out tons of times.
Yeah, everyone.
Right. Everyone does it. So I think rediscovering your other passions, your other hobbies outside of music is really important, because I think a lot of people can relate to this. I certainly can. At some point, music becomes a job when you're doing it every day, when you're doing it for money.
I've heard multiple times. I don't know if you listen to, shout out to the Back to Back pod with Willie Joy. Do you know about that podcast?
Yeah, great podcast.
He talks about all the time. He was like, dude, DJs need hobbies. Like everyone needs a hobby.
Everyone needs hobbies.
Yeah.
And yeah, finding what those are again, finding friends again, like seeing friends can be so helpful when you're in that down place, because you think you're alone there, but you'll talk to another homie and they're just in that same place. And it can really helps you
relate. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So yeah, those ebb and flows, you know, when it's flowing, for me at least, I'm writing like nonstop when I can.
Yeah.
When I feel like it's really going, like I'll just be writing ideas all the time. It was like that when I first got to Europe on this most recent trip.
Yeah.
Like it was after a very long dry spell before this in Vancouver, just not being able to get anything going. And then I landed in Europe and I think I was just writing nonstop for like a week straight.
Damn.
Was just new ideas. And then
so take advantage of those times.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely try to, but when I know that it's flowing, because I have been there when it's not, and I know that it's not going to be again soon. And yeah, like a week after that, again, I wasn't writing, but I was going out to shows and things like that. So getting the experiences. So making the most of when you can write and maximizing the time that you're writing when it's flowing and it feels good, because it's naive to think that that's going to last forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like finding that balance between what you're trying to say is basically find that balance between like going out and having a good time, but also like knowing how to go home and go to work as an artist. Definitely. Like both of those things are important. You can't just work all the time.
You have to find what your rest is. And when you find what that is, when you go into rest mode, really rest. Like, because some people say that they're resting, but their mind is on their work. Or
when you rest, do you like completely unplug from everything and you're just like, I'm just gonna go watch TV or read a book, or like I'm not touching my computer? Like what's your definition of rest for yourself?
I don't really talk about this. I actually don't think I've ever talked about this through the lens of Crimson Child, but I love to play Magic the Gathering. Do you know this game?
I've heard of it.
It's like a card game that exists.
Magic. Yeah.
And a lot of my friends play it. So for me personally, that is my ultimate way of disconnecting, because I just hang out with friends. It's a social aspect, and I play the game that I really love, that I've been playing since I was a kid.
That's awesome.
And you know, video games are fun too, but I feel like they're less restful for me, at least. Like, I don't really play like chill games. Like when I play games, it's like recently I've been playing Elden Ring, which is the new Dark Souls type game. Absolute opposite of rest. So, like those are fun, but I don't consider it really full rest, because when I come back from that, I'm not like ready to write right away.
Right.
But when seeing friends and playing Magic for me is the ultimate disconnect, because I don't answer messages for like 3-4 hours. It's not even that I'm unplugged. I just forget to look at my phone when it's happening. That's how in it you have to be when you're resting.
Right.
It's strange to look at resting like it's an emotional task, but it kind of is. Like,
you
have to be invested in the rest.
Yep.
And that's the only way that
especially when you have like a higher calling and you have a mission and a purpose in your own life. It's like, this is what I need to be doing. I love this. Like, obviously you have that, but like you also need to know how to take care of yourself and step away from what you love for a little bit. So
it's exhausting if it's all you're doing. Yeah.
Anything's exhausting. If you can exhaust anything.
Definitely.
That's all you're doing.
Definitely.
What are some tips that you have for people that, you know, may be struggling with taking time away from their work? And, you know, and it's great. Like I said, it's great to be passionate, great to be all in on your goals and dreams. But like we just said, we need to take a step away from that. What's some of your tips and, you know, guidelines that you have for those people that may be struggling with that?
I think the biggest thing when it comes to that is understanding that it's not a race.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think that, especially if you're a little older, you might think that, I'm behind.
Facts.
There's all these kids that are killing it right now. I have to get on it, you know, and that kind of mindset will kill you, because it's not a race. You will not be able to get there in 6 months or a year or 2 years. It's going to take longer.
Yep.
You have to be okay with the fact that it's going to take longer, and understanding that you can't just be a machine for however long that it takes. So that's number one, I think, is really facing the fact that it's not going to be overnight, and
Yep.
that you have to take care of yourself to be
That
able
makes
to
total
sustain.
sense.
And beyond that, like in terms of tips for people, I think there's things that you can do productively that isn't as emotionally taxing, creatively draining as writing new music or
Right.
progressing new parts. You can do mix downs or things that are more technical, that are not as like decision based in
Right.
terms of like, oh, what do I feel? What do I want to do this?
It's like 1 + 1 = 2 type of task.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that, things like organizing samples. Like I spend so much time just organizing my library,
Yeah.
for
I've
example,
heard
because
I've heard that's very, I'm not a producer myself, but I've heard that's very important as
it's
producers to
so
organize.
important.
With any work, if you're working on, I mean, even me, like with the podcast stuff, I keep things,
Mhm.
everything in folders. I keep everything organized, and like it does get out of order every week. I have to go through and clean it up. So same process.
Definitely
Yeah.
keeps your brain clean. And
Yeah.
yeah, doing things like that lets you, when you're actually focused on the thing that you need to be focused on, you don't have these other things getting in the way. Basically, doing all this, for me, my philosophy when it comes to production is to set everything up in a way so that when I want to write, it's as seamless as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So getting the library really sorted to the point that there's a lot of folders, like there's a lot of subfolders of types of sounds, but when you get down to a folder that actually has sounds in it, I try to keep it to less than 20 and only the highest quality stuff.
Oh,
So
interesting.
every sound that I'm clicking on is something that I would use
Uh-huh.
in a production. That plus templates, like
Yeah.
when I open up Ableton, it's not just 4 channels there. I have my drum folder, my percussion, my synths, my bass, all named, color coded, because I hate doing that when I'm actually writing.
Yeah.
So everything's already there, ready to go when you're producing. Because for me, yeah, it's really hard, and for a lot of people, it's really hard to get that ball rolling. So you might as well set up everything to get it as easy as possible.
Lower the
get that ball
barrier to
rolling.
entry too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, as we wrap up here, we've talked a lot about your past achievements in this conversation, but what's next for you in this year? What are some of your goals this year?
Yeah, I'm dropping new music on Friday.
Excellent.
Pretty excited about that.
Sweet. So when this comes out, actually, it'll be.
Yeah, that worked out pretty well, actually. Yeah, so Out of Love with Nato and Stefan Geisler is dropping on Friday. That's a song I'm really excited about. Been working on it for
Awesome.
like a year and a half.
I'll go ahead and link that in the description too for you. So
thanks, man.
Anyone who wants to check out that song, go click on that.
Yeah, it's dropping on Westwood, which is the Funk Hunters label. I'm a big fan of theirs. We did a remix for them a little while ago, but now to drop a single on their label is really exciting. Yeah, that's the main thing. I'm starting a new album soon.
Excellent. Album too.
So yeah, keep an eye on that. But I don't expect to be dropping that this year.
Okay.
But it's something that I would like to get going for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
And then
and more techno. Techno is definitely coming. The other project that I mentioned, I'm not going to name drop it, but I'm releasing music on there this year as well.
Excellent. Where can the listeners find you at and support you?
Spotify is definitely the best way. Crimson Child on Spotify or anywhere else.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Crimson Child. Final question. I ask this question at the end of every interview. Going all the way back to when you first, started your musical journey, not just Crimson Child, but actually started producing music. What is one piece of advice that you would tell yourself during that time, and why?
During that time, as in when I
taking the knowledge that you have now, going back to that time. What would you tell yourself?
I see.
Yeah.
I would tell myself to not quit piano when I was 4 years old. Yeah. When I started, it was with piano because my parents put me in it, but I hated it as a kid. Like I really did not like it, and kept begging them to let me quit. And they said, "Fine, but you have to play another instrument."
How's your relationship?
So that was the rule.
How's your relationship with the MIDI controller now?
Yeah, not great. I work with a lot of great keys players. I tend to write a lot of MIDI just like clicking on into the piano roll, but working with piano players definitely on the album was really helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would have wished that I didn't drop out of piano and kept playing that. But yeah, I just want to reiterate that feeling of it's not a race.
Yeah.
And it's a marathon. I think understanding that, like really deeply internalizing that early on is so important
Awesome.
for anyone who's starting on their career. So I don't know how 5-6-year-old me would react to hearing that advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I have to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today, man. It was a
Thank you
pleasure.
for having me.